So some objections to the cosmological argument. So we're going to have 3 objections from logic. We're going to attack, these are going to be attacks at our premises. And the first one is an objection that the physical universe actually exists. And some people will say we cannot be sure that the physical universe does indeed exist because we cannot know anything for sure. And so Hume was the philosopher that really kind of started this off. And he said we can't even really know anything from science. Just because we drop an apple and it drops, and we've done that a million times, history is no guarantee of the future, like you always hear on stock market commercials. So that was Hume's argument. And he also argued that whenever you've been in a dream and you've been so sure it's real, and you can't really, that's just electricity basically going on in your brain, different brain waves. How do we know that that's not going on right now? How do we know that all that we see isn't just a dream and we're being manipulated? Just like aka Matrix-esque. So Hume says basically you can be sure of nothing. Can't be sure of anything, you can be sure of nothing. Kant, Immanuel Kant, I've kind of painted him a little bit poorer than I should in the past, but I did my research this time. And he actually fought Hume and got us a little bit of the way back to, not all the way, but he got us a little bit of the way back. He said there's things that you can know that are logical truths from thoughts, but Hume may be right. We may not be sure that this is a chair. That's his simplified version of what he says. If you want to know more, you can research. But he says we can know some truths, but not necessarily things. Because he was concerned that, yes, our senses may be fooled. And so this was the next logical step for René Descartes to come in and say, I think, therefore I am. I think, I'm questioning, I'm observing. I know that somewhere something exists for me to be thinking. Now, it could be that all of y'all are just figments of my imagination, but I know I'm thinking. And so then Kant, or Hume comes back and says, well, no, you may just be in a delusion. And R.C. Sproul says that, well, if you can say that I'm a delusion, then at least you exist. So something exists. Something exists. If you can deny my existence, then you have to exist to do that. So we can, at least by thoughts, say that something is here. Okay, you're probably never going to meet someone on the street that you have to roll out this argument. But just so that you're prepared, or if you're sitting there listening and you hear someone say this argument, you can go, oh, they're not thinking, therefore they may not be.
I mess with people.
The second objection is to the premises number 5 and number 12. And these are kind of the foundation points. The premises that, well, let's read them. Number 5 was the history of the universe cannot be a series of infinitely many events arrayed in temporal succession. And number 12, the cause of the beginning of the universe could not have been an event. Those are going to be the chief objections to this argument. And just like we said before, events by definition do not have free will and therefore cannot cause themselves. An event can't be self-caused and cannot be self-existent. In other words, they are dependent beings. They are dependent beings. Dependent states of being. And so you may hear people say, well, especially in the scientific realm, singularities. The Big Bang, all matter of the universe was composed in a singularity. And a singularity is just a nice scientific word for something that scientists don't understand. It's singular in that it doesn't act or behave like any other point that they know of. That's why they call it a singularity. It's a phenomenon. It's unique in the traditional sense of unique in that there's nothing else like it. So you might hear someone say that all this matter was packed up in a singularity, smaller than small. But then what caused the singularity? So they're just kind of abstracting the question one step further, but then you can just say, what caused the singularity? Jim?
Yeah, you can put all that in a sentence as question mark, exclamation point.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing came from nothing. They have a question, but yet they still use it as their answer.
Right. Yeah, they don't have an answer. And you'll see, if you've seen Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed, this is where Ben Stein actually starts to chink away at the armor. What caused the first cell? Well, we don't know. Maybe an alien designed it. So they have no explanation for where everything came from. And that's why I think, even though I'm a strong proponent of design theory, obviously, I think the cosmological argument is actually stronger because you have to explain that stuff is here. The third objection from logic, and you'll hear Bertrand Russell, if you've ever heard of him, he wrote a book, said, Why I'm Not a Christian. One of my roommates said, if you'll read this book, I'll buy it for you. I said, okay. So I read about halfway through. And it's full of erroneous arguments. But someone might say to you, well, you said that everything has to be caused, right? And you say, yeah. And then they'll say, well, why doesn't God have a cause? Well, we want to be careful. Don't present it as everything has to be a cause, because God does not have a cause, right? So that's where we have to be precise in what we say. But instead of saying everything, you can say events have to be caused. The physical universe has to be caused. Effects. If there's an effect, there has to be a cause. Some things, by their very nature, have to be independent beings to exist. They are self-existent. That will be part of our homework for today. But so you shouldn't say everything should be caused, but you should say everything that's an event or a physical universe has to have a cause. God is not a physical event or being, and being is lowercase here, which I'm blending a couple arguments, but a lowercase being is just a being. It could be a dependent state of being or an independent state of being. It's not necessarily something that's alive. Although he can choose to enter the physical world, and we're grateful that he did choose to do so, he is an agent that cannot not exist. He cannot not exist. In other words, he by his very nature must exist, and this is known as self-existent. So nothing caused him. He is, right? So now we have two qualitative arguments. If you present this argument, someone may reply, well, this doesn't prove that God still exists, only that he existed in the beginning. And to this we'll say yes and no. Yes and no. Yes, it's true that the argument precisely deals with the beginning and not the present time, but no, the only being capable of being there in the beginning cannot not exist, just like we said. Therefore, he's in existence today. Okay? So to have anything, you have to have a self-existent being. If you have a self-existent being, then he exists today.